Morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 4 and episode number 475 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Cryo Media Network. Yeah. Today,
Crier Media.
recording day is Monday, September 23rd, 2024. And it is going to be, and I don't know what day at the Beaver Lodge, actually, to be totally honest, because I haven't had a chance to check this morning. It's been a bit of a weird morning. I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, A. And with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. Apologies for the late start. As the kids that were in the chat knew, I was ready to go about 5 minutes before showtime, and then computer said no to absolutely everything repeatedly many times. But
Gotta migrate to the new computer, man. Gotta migrate to the new computer.
I have no time to set it up, and like I said, if it keeps on doing this, I'm trying to get up to date on the episode descriptions before I make the switch, so I don't get another delay. But hey, I tell you, it's doing this weird thing now that when I shut it down, because I took a bit of a media break this weekend, and went out and did some stuff and lived life. It doesn't turn back on with the settings that were there when I turned it off. Like things just completely change, which is really bizarre. Just started doing this like Friday show and now today.
I would suggest not turning it off then. Just let it go to sleep.
I've tried that too, but when I go to sleep and then I try to turn it back on, nothing happens. So I have to reboot. So this is what's been happening the last 3-4 days. It's just been really weird. So things that are on my screen that I have ready, you turn it back on and you press restore and everything comes back. They don't come back.
Right.
So,
well, that sucks.
Yeah, it really does actually, because it really throws you off. But hey, we're all here and we're all together. So that's what matters. And we will have a show for you no matter what. But Mr. Grizzly, how's your mental health doing today, sir?
Mental health is okay. My physical health is leaves a little to be desired there. My allergies, it's hay season, right? So my butt's getting kicked right now, along with my back is killing me. I had a very, very busy weekend. Saturday we were up early, took Lola out for like a long walk, and then went to Taste of Wellington on Wellington Street here in Hintonburg, Westboro area. Left there, turned and went to the Red Blacks game. Got home from the Red Blacks game, got changed, took Lola out quickly, and then we went to a friend's 50th birthday party way out in the country. So yeah, didn't get home till late, and we got home and we're still kind of wound up from the party because we're dancing that. So we went over to the Manx to have a beer because the lineup to get into the pump was like insane. Yeah. So we just went over to the Manx and had a beer, and then Sunday morning woke up, and Bridget was like, get up, we got to go. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's only 8 o'clock. She was, Army Run. Oh, yes. Okay. So we went down to Army Run with Lola and met lots of people and saw there must have been 15,000 runners, if not more. It's a big race. Yeah. It's a big race.
Okay. For us, it was a good weekend too. We had a Poutine Fest going on in town. So we went to there on Friday night at the Market Square. There was a end of summer outdoor dance party by City Hall with live
cool.
DJ and whatnot. So we had a outside dance, lovely weather for it. And then on the weekend, we took a trip out to go visit Kit Hugh.
Oh,
And
cool.
met his brother, met his father, spent a night out in the area. We were in Peterborough area yesterday and took a slow drive back, stopped in Stirling, Ontario for a little bit and got back home. So it was a lovely disconnect weekend. So the show might be a little thin on content.
Wasn't a lot happening this weekend.
I haven't done my regular research. I just really enjoyed the weekend, which is really nice. We both needed it.
Mm-hmm.
We both needed it. Just some getaway time. But yeah.
Not a lot happened this weekend news-wise, though. I mean, I was checking lines. I don't see a lot.
Because I really checked out. Because yesterday when we got back home, Alex was doing some work. We're trying to, we have a crawl space under the bedroom and it's way too humid. And we noticed that there was some mold that was starting to form. So we had to take all that, deal with the mold and brought in a dehumidifier and we're going to tarp it and all that kind of stuff to try to keep the moisture down. So while Alex was installing the dehumidifier yesterday, I was all over looking for news about the launch of the BC election because it launched on Saturday. You wouldn't really know it. I had more difficulty finding anything whatsoever about the launch of the BC election than I did for the New Brunswick election. And the New Brunswick election was challenging enough. I mean, I really, normally I should just be able to type in, campaign launch, NDP, BC, and get a whole thing. There is nothing. There's nothing.
No.
There's nothing on David Eby's personal site. There's nothing on the NDP's site. There's literally nothing. There are little clips and newscasts, but nothing. Which I don't know who's doing comms for the political parties this provincial election season. Yeah, you're right, Kit Saucy. The U.S. election has taken all the spotlight. But my word, you think that the comm shops from the parties at least would be filming everything and putting it on their YouTubes.
Well, you would think.
Right?
But
I mean, it's a campaign launch. You just need to set a camera, press start. You don't need to pan. You don't need to zoom in. You don't need to make cuts. You just record the whole thing as it happens and then just put it up. But that does not seem to be happening, which is weird, especially for a campaign launch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. It's very bizarre.
It's been very bizarre. But yeah, over the course of the weekend now, officially some stuff sort of happened a bit Friday, but it really was on Saturday that it was the big thing, the official launch. So the premier went to visit the lieutenant governor of the province of British Columbia, whose name I believe is Janet Austin, if I'm not mistaken, and asked for the right to have the writ be dropped. And yeah, it is Janet Austin. And so it'll be the 43rd provincial general election in British Columbia, and it's scheduled to take place on October 19th. In British Columbia, they do have a fixed election date law. So the leaders have been, quote unquote, unofficially campaigning for weeks, according to CTV here. But apparently the pace and the events and rhetoric heated up quickly. I don't know about the events. The rhetoric we've heard about, that's for sure. During a stop in Langley as part of a day-long blitz of Lower Mainland communities, New Democrat leader David Eby took a shot at BC Conservative leader John Rustad's campaign kickoff event by saying it was sparsely attended with a few crows nearby.
Wow.
Wow, shade.
Yeah, a little bit, eh?
Who opened his campaign, especially Crow. Rustad, who opened his campaign at Vancouver's downtown Eastside Crab Park, called EB's leadership weak. Ooh, gee. Keep that language down, gentlemen. Crows and weak. Ooh, it's getting a little hot in here. Jeez, God. Are you guys voted it in? Green leader Sonia Furstenau strove for a different tone during her party's campaign launch in Victoria and stayed out of any name-calling. Quote, while the other parties have focused the early days of the campaign on political maneuvering and mudslinging, the BC Greens have released a series of evidence-based plans that will make BC the best place in the world again, she said. Now, people are, analysts, pundits, whatnot, are saying that, how would I put it? That in this election, a lot of the territory is pretty much already staked. The BC interior and all that stuff will probably be going conservative. Stuff in Vancouver and certain other areas might be going liberal. The Greens currently have 2 seats. There's some speculation that the Greens might emerge from this one with no seats just because everything is so polarized, not because the Greens don't have anything to offer. The polls show both parties tied at the exact same vote intention rates, leaving the NDP with about a 5 or 6 seat, when you translate into seats, edge at the moment as the campaign starts. But this is something I wanted to show you again, kids and cubs, because when we're looking at the federal take, right now we're looking at the polls and we're seeing this big gap. And I keep on talking about things often reverting to the mean when it comes time for an election, when it tends to get a little closer. And the BC chart really shows this, and I will put it up, Mr. Grizzly. Now, again, we have to recognize that in BC, there's some abnormal circumstances in that, how can I put it? Oh, wait a minute. This is the federal one. Pardon me. That's the wrong map. Darn, I forgot where I was going with this one. Oh yes, sorry, the gap. I got thrown by the wrong map coming up. What they're here we go. This is the right one. I'll put it up here, Mr. Grizzly. So there's a big gap at some point, and this is what we're seeing federally. But I want to show it to you on BC as well. So if you look here at the beginning of the year, 2024, right here where you see the cursor, this is where the NDP was, and this is where the Conservative Party in British Columbia, which has changed so many times since then.
I don't even know what it is anymore.
Yeah, so, I mean, here you had a Unite the Right movement that started, and then the BC United flip. So, I mean, this is not your typical set of circumstances behind this graph, because normally that doesn't happen in a province. But you see that right as we're getting closer to an election, see, it looks, oh yeah, the NDP's cruising to this, don't bother, don't show up, it's already in the bag. And then as we get closer, and basically they start the election tied. So this is what I'm looking for to happen at the federal level as well. And if that doesn't happen as we get closer, then you know for sure you got to change election, right? But federally, we have to get through 3 provincial elections and the U.S. election first before you get to have any real sense of what it is that the federal parties will be going into the next federal election, the overall temperature of the water in which everybody's going to be swimming in for that. So that's why I'm pretty much ignoring federal stuff until at least maybe, 2-3 weeks after the U.S. election, and we see what the reaction is here. But I fully expect as an election call comes nearer that what it is, the big gap that there is will start to narrow, and then we'll get into a competition for sure. And if that doesn't happen, then you know for sure it's over for the incumbent. But over here in British Columbia, it's this is a really interesting graph, and you can see that the Unite the Right movement in British Columbia has worked.
Certainly seems like it.
Now they have a weird salesman because, well, John Rustad has had a bit of an eventful path
That's
to
one way
getting
to
where
put
he
it.
was. I believe he was with a certain political party at one point, and then I don't know if he left on his own or was invited to leave or was kicked out. But yeah, he he was reelected in 2020 and served as Liberals' critics for forest lands and natural resource operations. This is according to Wikipedia. After suggesting online that carbon dioxide emissions were not contributing to climate change, as part of the BC Liberals, Rustad was removed from the Liberal caucus by leader Kevin Falcon on August 18th, 2022. He then sat in the legislature as an independent politician. On February 16, 2023, Rustad joined the BC Conservative Party. Given the party representation in the legislature, Rustad cited irreconcilable differences with Falcon in explaining his party change. I guess those differences aren't irreconcilable anymore. On March 23rd, 2023, Rustad announced that he was running to be leader of the BC Conservatives. He was acclaimed as the leader on March 31st, 8 days later, succeeding Trevor Bolin. And on September 13th, 2023, BC United MLA Bruce Badman crossed the floor to join the Conservatives. This gave the Conservatives 2 MLAs necessary for official party status in British Columbia. And then it seems that somewhere along the way, Kevin Falcon, who had basically kicked him out of the BC Liberals, then decided he was going to fold the BC United and join Kevin Rustad, who he kicked out of. Are you following this yet? It's like a soap opera.
I'm very confused. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
So, and then since then, Rustad has basically lifted every media line that Pierre Poilievre has been using for the past year and a half. And is go running with that. Rustad kicked off his campaign in front of a homeless encampment, using the tents as the backdrop, which created a lot of controversy and scandal, similar to when PP did it for one of his videos. Once again, exploiting the misery and tragedy of people for personal political gain. And I'm guessing he also did not knock on the flaps of the tents to ask the people he was exploiting whether or not he could use their homes as a backdrop to make his case. I'm going to guess. Yeah. So not the best start in that sense, but on track and on brand for what this movement appears to have become, pointing out those people who are living in a way that makes us uncomfortable, or who might be pushing our ick or ooh button, and then saying, I'll take care of them. So, yeah. Not the best at all. And actually quite disappointing, to be totally honest. Because you'd think we would expect better from people who are allegedly supposed to be running to represent everyone. But no. EB's first day also included stops in Richmond, North Vancouver, and Burnaby, where he introduced candidates in area ridings. EB was greeted by enthusiastic crowds at Richmond and Langley, where people lined the streets outside his events and crowded into rooms to mingle with the NDP leader. EB was presented with Iranian homemade bread at a stop in North Vancouver, which he sampled immediately after ripping off a large chunk. But he also found time to launch broadsides against his main political rival on issues that are sure to dominate the campaign: namely healthcare and housing policy. Rustad is proposing to make deep healthcare cuts and will drop government housing affordability measures, returning the homes issue to property speculators, he said. Quote, "We're going to build the housing people need," EB said, adding Rustad said Saturday government should not have a role in housing. Yeah, that was another one. So climate change is not an existential threat, and the government should have no role in housing, says Rustad.
This is really stupid.
In other words, he's saying he's got nothing for you.
Well,
in British Columbia, where housing prices and lodging prices are a thing everywhere, but in BC, where they've been a thing for quite a long time, the guy who wants to be premier says it should not be my responsibility, and I got nothing for you.
Well, and then you compare and contrast that to the city of Montreal, which is looking at, and in the province of Quebec for that matter, looking at putting an end to basement apartments due to all the flooding that took place this past summer. 75,000 personal property claims from last month's storm, basement flooding, 2.5 billion in damages. Montreal will now allow boroughs in the city to ban construction of new basement apartments. Here's where that can be a bit of an issue. Basement apartments in a city tend to be the cheapest apartments you can rent. They're not always the most expensive. So, it's an option for a lot of people, but now they're going to say, no, you can't do this anymore. Apparently, according to, let's see, where is it? Landlords are already taking their basement units off the market, while insurance companies have started to deny flood coverage to some higher risk buildings with basements. So, meanwhile, you got this guy in BC who's saying, not my responsibility.
Well, and here's the other thing, too, is that he chooses to do his opening in front of these types of tents, right? Rustad said he chose Crab Park on Vancouver's waterfront for his campaign opening because it showcased the industrial activity happening at the city port, as well as issues of homelessness and toxic drugs. But he's got nothing for you in housing, and he says it shouldn't be provincial responsibility, or that government shouldn't be involved. Then why are you using the tents?
Yeah.
Oh my God, homelessness is terrible. Okay, well, I'm not going to do anything about it. So on to the next subject. Then why have that as your backdrop then?
Exploiting people for political gain. I don't know.
I know, right? So the park has been a site of friction. Several homeless people mounted a successful court challenge to stay in an encampment set on the property. The city crews moved in earlier this year, saying the site had become dangerous and hazardous. Just a few tents remained in the background behind Rustad's podium on Saturday. Quote, "It's a stark contrast between what we're trying to do for the people of British Columbia, which is nothing apparently on housing, and where we hope to see hope for our future." Wow, we're hoping for hope. He's not even going to provide hope. He's just going to hope that hope will somehow magically arrive at some point. Oh my God, this guy. BC is at a crossroads. The question is, are we going to fight for a future, or are we going to continue to manage decline? Rustad later moved on to Vancouver Island, where the BC Conservatives are targeting several NDP-held ridings. What's that, the quote?
I want to be premier.
Yes.
Be provincial responsibility. Right?
Yeah. I think your voice may have cut out there, Mr. Grizzly there.
There's something going on here this morning. I'm getting static. You keep freezing, but it's only on my end, not yours.
Okay.
So
It was
I don't know what's happening.
Kit Jim saying, "I want to be premier, but I don't want anything to be provincial responsibility." That seems to be pretty much it. He said the party would lay out the BC Conservative plan over the next 29 days to address the issues that he said the NDP have failed to solve. Quote, "There is hope that we can bring change, whether it's getting rid of the carbon tax, whether it's the investments that we're going to make in healthcare, whether it is the changes that we need to do to get treatment and recovery in place for people with addictions, or whether it is making sure that we get our economy going," he said. EB also focused on Rustad's healthcare agenda, saying the BC Conservative plan would mean cuts, including fewer healthcare workers and cancelled hospital projects. Quote, "You don't fix that system by cutting services, by cutting money out of that system," he said. "Now is the time to hire healthcare workers. Does that seem intuitive to you?" "It seems intuitive to me." EB, who started his campaign a day early on Friday, said the province is facing many tough challenges, including affordable housing, public healthcare, mental health and addictions, and the cost of living, but he pledged to be laser focused on tackling them. Quote, "We can't divide each other," said EB. "The only way we solve these problems is by working together. Here's my commitment to you, to everybody in this room, to all British Columbians. We won't rest until the job is done. Be prepared to stay up 24/7 for the next 4 years, sir, because the problem's big. First to Know said her party is committed to, quote, greater collaboration and communication with the goal of solving problems of healthcare, education, social safety, infrastructure, and affordable housing. Quote, we have to address these challenges. They're all solvable, but we don't solve them by going to our corners and pointing our fingers at each other and spending all of our time focused on who's right and who's wrong, she said. It's about working together. First No said that the Green Party's full platform would be released in the coming days. Now, the reason I mentioned that these things take a while is because this morning I was reading an article about right here in Kingston, the opening of a new co-op building, 3-story co-op building with 38 residences, with rents, I think, about 63 to 82% below, around 63 to 82% of market price. So that people can actually get a 2-bedroom apartment for just under $1,000. Right? That project took 7 years.
7 years?
From the time they started talking about it to the time they officially unveiled it. 7 as is complete. It took 7 years. So that's what I'm saying. And we're talking about BC Ground Zero here.
Yeah.
Look, if you probably won't stop until the job is done. You're pretty much going to do nothing but that, and you got to find a way to light a fire under several backsides. Because 7 years for a 38 residence co-op project, some would say that's too long.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah.
38
units.
7 years.
7 years.
That's ridiculous.
I know.
Look, I understand that some projects take 10 years to get off the ground, from planning stages to purchase the land, plan it, do the soil samples, this, that, the other thing. You design changes multiple times. I get that, but usually when it takes that long, it's because it's housing 200 or 300 people, not 38. I understand all the rules and regulations are in place to make sure that the build goes peace so that people don't get harmed in the process. And all of that is reasonable and makes sense. But 7 years for 38 units? That's absurd.
Yeah. So it seems that in British Columbia, the big battleground is going to be the Surrey area. And many of the leaders are saying that they are planning to go there several times. I think Rustad said that he'll probably be there between 6 and 10 times over 29 days. So Surrey, it's one of the fastest growing areas in all of Canada. And of course, as we know, if you've been following the news, there's some gang issues there in Surrey as well. And then there are gangs. Well, there are drugs and other things. So that's sort of like ground zero. I would put it. If anybody wants to have a doom and gloom election campaign and point to everything that's going wrong in BC, you could basically, stay in Surrey and point and say, "Hey, see this and see that and see this," and pretend that it applies to the entire province. That life in Prince Rupert is like life in Surrey.
I've got something here that was just sent to me in regards to John Rustad. It's apparently the BC Conservatives' willingness to use the notwithstanding clause to overrule the courts and implement their ideological will on the people.
Oh God, not that.
This is it's a 31-second clip from I think it looks like it's a podcast, air quotes media. So yeah, it's a podcast. Watch this.
We may end up getting a challenge in terms of the involuntary compassionate care. We may end up getting a challenge from a Section 7 under human rights. If that were to happen, we would certainly argue the case with the judge that this is the right thing to do for people and it's the right thing to do in British Columbia. But if the judge disagrees with us, then we would have to consider using the notwithstanding clause. We need to be in a position to be able to do what's right for people in British Columbia, and that should not be prohibited by a judge making a policy.
So that pretty much says, we'll go and put it before the law, but if the law tells us it's illegal, well, we don't fucking care. We're just going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Involuntary compassionate care. In other words, You go in a home. You go into a place where you have no say in it. You have lost your ability to defend yourself or your right to be free. And basically they're locking him up effectively is what's happening.
Yeah,
It's what's happening.
but they
And
don't
this
have
is
the
what he's
space
saying.
for it.
No, but this is what he's saying. He's like, well, we'll just use a notwithstanding clause. We don't give a shit.
Yeah, but then okay, but again, let's follow this thing through, right?
Just
You use the
wow.
notwithstanding clause. You still have to have the places to put them.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to have the services.
And you don't. You don't have the space. You don't have the place.
And you're not prepared to build them either.
No, because that's not his responsibility, he says, apparently.
Again, all of these things, again, if you got your nose up against the tree, can sound good.
Well, it's, like I said, the municipality builds the facilities, but it's funded by the province.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
But here's the case for people that are talking about involuntary treatment, right? It's like these people, they're a menace to themselves and they're a menace to other people. Usually, don't we commit these people? It's like there's a certain point where people get where, yes, we do,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's not because you're making bad choices for your life, right? It's because you're literally a clear and present imminent danger.
Yes.
Like potentially fatal danger to yourself and to others. Not because you happen to not like somebody's lifestyle or they're making choices that are damaging to themselves. But if you're going to do that, then you have to build enough treatment centers for the issue that you have. Because, and here's the thing, that's what's going on in Ontario, and he's planning to do this in British Columbia as well, is shut down the overdose prevention centers. If you shut them down,
it's just going to move the problem to the streets.
Well, yes, but if in Ontario, say like us, we're going to build these heart hubs. This is going to be 358 spaces or whatever. If there are more than 358 addicts on the streets, and you close the sites before you actually build the centers, and they're staffed and they're operational, you've just created a gap.
Yes.
Where people just die. Then if they are open and you happen to have them staffed, yes, there's only a certain number of spaces. What happens to the rest of the people? They die.
Yeah.
Right? So this is the type of project where you turn around and you talk to someone at home that, that doesn't have time to game it out. Because they're working double overtime and they have kids and maybe parents living at home too, and they're busy. There's something like this. People are dangerous to themselves. I'm walking outside my street. I'm walking outside or I'm walking downtown and I see all these people there like this and I don't feel safe or, like this, or I'm concerned or I'm, holding my purse a little tighter when I'm walking down like this. Yeah, do something about it. Okay. But if you're going to do something about it, you got to do something about the whole problem and you have to build the infrastructure and fund it before you shut off what's there now for it to have any noticeable impact and any real positive impact right from the get-go to set yourself up for success. If you're not prepared to do that, don't promise people that you're going to tackle the problem because you're not. All you're doing is moving from one geographic area to another, ensuring more people die, ensuring more people find needles, ensuring more people trip over bodies in alleyways. These are not solutions. These are not solutions. Even if you believed in committing people against their will, if you don't build the spaces for it and don't have the infrastructure and don't have the personnel, the staff, and are not prepared to commit the budget that is required to see all these people through recovery, it's not going to happen.
Well, let's address another issue here too, along with this. He talks about involuntary compassionate care, which sometimes is a necessity, right? If somebody is a danger to themselves or others and they don't recognize this, we have to take care of them. Except the way he wants to apply it is anybody he sees as undesirable, right? Just a broad stroke. If anybody's undesirable, that's it. You're getting committed. In the past, to commit someone against their will because they were a danger to themselves or others, you go before a judge, there's hearings, there's things that happen, like there's checks and balances in place, but what he's trying to do is take them away and just make his own determination, which is very dangerous.
And you're going to get a situation similar to what was the case during the dismantling of the occupation in Ottawa, when people took that to court, and federal court judge Mosley, Richard Mosley, ruled that when it came to, for example, the freezing of the bank accounts issue, right? It wasn't that freezing with the bank accounts itself was unconstitutional. That happens all the time.
Yes, CRA
it
does
was
whatever
that
they
the
want.
police, it was that the police were going to the bank and saying, "We're worried about these people. Please freeze their bank accounts," and that it wasn't going through an independent, objective third party like a judge. The police should have brought their request to a judge, to get a judge to say, yes, in this case you can freeze this account, and then bring it to a bank. Right? Just in case. Here's the same thing. If we're just picking people off the street and then putting them in that type of treatment voluntarily, because these people do have rights. These people do have rights. And the Supreme Court of Canada has already ruled that people who suffer from addiction should not be condemned to a death sentence just because they happen to be struggling with an addiction. You can't abandon them.
No.
You can't say, too bad, this is a choice you made for yourself. Screw you.
I think
you can't deny them the service of a safe injection center, or, for example, a safe inhalation center, one which has just opened in British Columbia. The first one in Canada has just opened 4 days ago. Rusted wants to rip it out, just like Doug Ford ripped out the Chargers. It's there. It's already built. Staff it properly. Have the proper security. Have whatever like this. Don't tear it down.
Yeah.
You just built it. Give it time to work. See what happens, right? And now they're going to say, well, we already saw what happened with the those sites. Well, again, did you staff them properly security-wise?
Who knows? Since
you opened these sites, what else have you done to help that community? Insight's been around for a while.
It's got to be pushing 20 years, isn't it?
I would say so.
I think it's got to be close to 20 years.
So what are these things? Have to work together. Insight was open in 2003.
There you go, 21 years.
Yeah. You build the harm reduction services, but that doesn't mean, okay, I got the harm reduction services, that should solve it. I don't need to do anything else. You got to build all the wraparound services that go along with it. Yes, while doing the public education piece to help people, next generations not get involved, while having the community diversion programs so that at-risk youth have stuff to do after school that's productive and don't wind up in situations where somebody would say, hey, first hit is free. Wink. Right?
Yeah.
You have to do the other stuff too. You can't just build the harm reduction center and say, okay, job is done.
No, it's there's more to it than that.
And then come back to two decades later and go, well, it didn't work. Well, you didn't do the rest of the stuff.
You didn't do anything.
There were more elements to the plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
These people.
Well, and this is part of the conservative ideology, I think, in many cases. Well, it didn't work right away, so it's a failure. Let's bring in the private sector. No. And again, I say conservative, not progressive conservative. Conservative. Reform Party. Because progressive conservatives, now some have sold off institutions to our detriment. Air Canada, for an example, Brian Mulroney sold that off. That was nationalized. He sold it off to a private investor firm, and now we have what was once a great airline is now a shadow of its former self. Anybody who's flown with them recently would know that, because the shareholders need a bigger dividend check every quarter. So as a result, they cut back left, right, and center, right to the bone. What is the bare minimum required by law? That's what they do. That's what all of these companies are doing today.
Mhm.
And I watched a very good episode of 60 Minutes last night. I don't know if you caught it. And they had Lena Khan on there, who's the head of the Federal Trades Commission, the FTC.
Mhm.
Oh boy, big companies are afraid of her.
Mm.
They're terrified of her because she's taking them down. And she's talking about greed. She's like, the problem here is greed. And I watched it last night with Bridget, and we were like cheering her on. It's like, I'm a fan of this person. She's like, they're getting wealthy on the backs of working people, and they don't care. They don't care who they harm as long as they get a bigger check each year or each quarter. Greed is bad for everyone.
Mhm.
It's just terrible. It harms so many people in the process, and it destroys the greedy person. It gets their life is destroyed in the process too. I've read a lot of articles about this, and some a gentleman who used to be a broker, and he just talking about how 1 year at Christmas his end of year bonus was only going to be $4 million. He's like, how am I supposed to survive on that? And he said it out loud, and he said, I had a sudden realization. What the hell is wrong with me? How am I going to survive on a $4 million bonus?
Yeah, bonus. Not even salary, bonus.
He said, literally, I had a clear thought. It's like, I have to stop. He got out of the game, and he started an organization similar to NA or AA, if you will. And it's wealth addiction,
Mhm.
where he is bringing people in to discuss how they just got greedier and greedier and greedier and wanted more and more and more, and realized that they'll never have enough.
Yeah.
Which is why they're walking away from it.
Well, see, and that's a human nature thing, right?
Mhm.
Everybody compares themselves to someone else. So depending what circle you're swimming in, even when you're really rich, there's always someone who's richer than you.
That's right. So when is it
That's what I'm
enough?
saying. They're playing Monopoly for real at that level, right? For them, it's not just a board game.
Well, it was it reminds me of the story of years ago. The author of Catch-22, whose name is escaping me right now, he'd only written a few books, not like hundreds of bestsellers, but he had a few bestsellers, and Catch-22 was a big one, which became a movie, and I think there was a TV series at one point, but I could be wrong.
Joseph Heller,
thank you. And he was at a meeting where they were celebrating some billionaire who had just achieved something new. And somebody said to Joseph Heller, he says, if you got out and wrote more books and pushed more, you could have his kind of money. He says, no, I'm good. He says, well, yeah, but look at what he's done, all this. He goes, look, he has all this money and all these possessions and all this power, but there's one thing I have that he'll never have. He said, what's that? He says, enough. I have enough. He'll never have enough. I don't need more. I'm happy with what I have. I have enough. And we need more and more people to adjust to that mentality. Because if we don't, it's just bad.
I keep on thinking of like Sinead O'Connor's album title, I do not want what I haven't got. Yeah, exactly. I say that often to people. It's like, I'm 50. If I haven't got it by now, it's because I didn't want it.
Yeah.
Most likely. I haven't put in the energy or the effort to get it.
I already have.
For me to have it.
I'm a working class individual. Well, not right now, but you know what I mean. And I already have more than I ever dreamt possible. Like in reality, you have your fantasies when you're younger. I want to be rich and I want to do this and I want to travel the world. I've done all of those things. I've traveled the world. There's still parts of it I want to go and visit and see, of course, but I've been fortunate enough to have friends who live in parts of the world that I can go and stay at, because if I want to go travel throughout Europe, if I don't have a place to stay, I simply can't afford to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes just getting the money together for the flight was difficult. I've used points to travel. I've, scrimped and saved. And so, people, you've been to Paris a dozen times. I go, yeah, I have. And I've been fortunate enough to do that.
And there are choices that you made of things that you were not going to have in order to have that.
I never wanted to own a home. I wanted to see the world. I couldn't do both. It was own a home or see the world. I wanted to see the world.
And me, when I was a kid, it was younger, so the same thing. I wanted to see the world. And then later on, it's sort of like, ooh, roots. Maybe I need that. And my priorities shifted. But I was a foster kid. I didn't bother to take the driving lessons when I was 16, like everybody else did in my high school and upper middle class neighborhood, because I figured I would never have enough money to buy a car. So
Right.
what's the point of spending like $300 now when
Mhm.
I'm 16 trying to learn how to drive something I will never own? Because I figured my station in life was my station in life.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
Like this, and I knew I could pull myself out of it, but it would take a lot of work, and and it wasn't guarantee of success. And I certainly wasn't going to well, I'm 16. I'm trying to save enough money to go to university for tuition. So driving can wait.
Mhm.
Thank you. Right. Because, if I don't go to university and get a degree and get a good job, there's certainly no chance in hell I'm going to be owning a car. So I was like, this is like a wasted $300 right now. Right. That was my thinking. Because I never thought I would be a homeowner.
Mhm.
I never thought I would be operating a business.
Yeah.
When I was 6, I'm a welfare kid,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
I was hoping for, like I said, a nice apartment that was safe, that could be somewhat tastefully decorated, and just having, muddling through as
Mhm.
best I can, hopefully happy. That's why I get people asked me for a long time, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "I want to be a lawyer." I was like, "I want to be happy." 'Cause
That was, John
'cause
Lennon.
I need myself some happy.
John Lennon, when he was in school, they said, "What do you want people to be when you grow up?" And he says, "I want to be happy." They said, "I don't think you understand the assignment." He says, "I don't think you understand life."
Yeah.
We're like, and as somebody who battled depression for 44 years, because it's still a battle for me, being happy, that's a pretty lofty goal for somebody like me. And
Uh-huh.
I am happy. I am happy. I mean, yeah, sure, I got my difficulties just like everybody else, but I'm happy.
Mm.
And that is an achievement as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm. Now, I need to issue a little gentle correction on myself, or gentle precision. When I
Oh,
say that the Inhalation Center in Vancouver that is open is the first one, it's the first inhalation center, but it's not necessarily the first inhalation room.
what
In
exactly is an
in
inhalation center, by the way?
So we have safe injection, right?
Right.
But a lot of people now are not injecting them; they're actually inhaling. And you
So,
can't do that in a safe injection center because the vapors go all
right,
over.
right.
So now
Okay.
they've got these rooms that I guess are somewhat pressurized,
Okay.
whatnot, that have an
Negative pressure.
expulsion
Right. I
system
understand.
that to remove that, and if something happens, then somebody can come in. I guess there's might be some video monitoring like this, and if they see something happens, they'll come in and help you. But at least it's, but this one in Vancouver will have multiple rooms.
Hmm.
So many clients can come at the same time. But there is one in Saskatoon, because the group Prairie Harm Reduction in Saskatoon, which operates solely on public donations and sales of merchandise, because the government's not funding it at all in any way, shape, or form in Saskatchewan, has had an inhalation room since it opened in 2020. And there were some in Alberta as well, for a time. Said Alberta used to have inhalation rooms. The supervised consumption site in Lethbridge, run by a nonprofit group named Arches, had 2 of them until it was closed by the UCP government in 2020, and the site was replaced with a mobile unit run by Alberta Health Services.
Which is now being farmed off to Covenant Health Services, which is a private for-profit Catholic hospital. Anyway, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the AHS mobile site has far fewer booths, operates away from the downtown core, and lacks inhalation spaces. But the one in Vancouver, it says here in City News that it's ready to open with the aim of reducing drug poisonings and disease transmission, offering referrals for those seeking treatment, and decreasing drug use in public. The BC Centre for Excellence in HIV and AIDS unveiled the inhalation site Wednesday at Hope to Health Research and Innovation Center in the downtown east side. The executive director, Julio Montaner, who is world renowned
Hmm.
for his contributions, says supervised injection sites have been successful in preventing people from dying from overdoses, and those who smoke their drugs need a similar service. Quote, the number of people who were dying from overdoses who had a background of injection drug use was decreasing over time. On the other hand, the number of people dying from in the context of smoking drugs was increasing in a very rapid fashion. Montana says people can start using these rooms in the coming weeks. Quote, The inhalation room attached to a medical facility is an ideal way to engage people in a conversation regarding their use, and even when they are ready, willing, and able, we can help them to transition to better programs, whether it's medical programs, he said. The center has been running a supervised injection site for years, which sees more than 1,000 people monthly, and last month resuscitated 5 people. The
Wow.
new facilities offer indoor individual negative pressure rooms that allow fresh air to circulate and can clear out smoke in 30 to 60 seconds while users are monitored by trained nurses. Advocates calling for more supervised inhalation sites have previously said the rules for setting up sites are overly complicated at a time when the province is facing an overdose crisis. More than 15,000 people have died of overdoses since the public health emergency was declared in BC in April 2016. Kate Salters, a senior researcher at the center, said they worked with mechanical and chemical engineers to make sure the site is up to code and abides by the highest standard of occupational health and safety. Quote, "This is just another tool in our toolbox to make sure that we're offering life-saving services to those who are using drugs." Montana acknowledged the process to get the site up and running took, quote, "an inordinate amount of time," but said the center worked hard to follow all regulations. Quote, "We feel that doing this right with an appropriate scientific background in a medically supervised environment, etc., allows us to derive the data that ultimately will be sufficiently convincing for not just our leaders, but also the leaders across the country and across the world to embrace the strategies that we are trying to develop." Montana said building the facility was possible thanks to a single $4 million donation from a longtime supporter.
Wow.
Construction finished less than a week before the launch of the next provincial election campaign and within a year of the next federal election. Montana said people could start using the specialized rooms in a matter of weeks after final approvals from the city and federal government. According to the BC Coroner Services, drug smoking-related overdose deaths have overtaken those by injection, with smoking-related deaths increasing from 29% in 2016 to 65% in 2023, whereas injection-related overdose fatalities have decreased from 36% in 2016 to 15%. So basically, the way that people are using drugs is shifting, so therefore the response must as well.
It's a smart way to do it. Well, I just, one second. Sorry about that. I had to clear my throat. Just the other day, I was out for a walk with Lola, and Bridget was with me, and I pointed out something to her. I said, just take a look to your left there. She goes, what? And I said, she goes, what was she doing? And I said, well, it's either crack, crystal meth, or fentanyl. I don't know which one. And just like sitting right beside the quickie in Bushy Square, right beside the tent. And I had walked by an hour earlier, and she was shaking so bad she couldn't do anything. And I don't know if somebody helped her or what, but she was able. Her hand was steady, and she was trying to huff. I don't know, huff, inhale, whatever. The glass pipe and the tin foil and the whole,
Yeah.
And somebody looked, and I just just sort of leave it be. Like this person is suffering, whether you realize it or not. This person is suffering. They don't need to be in jail. They need to get some help. And unfortunately, I don't think there's help available. So we just wandered on by, and both of us felt pretty bad. But what are we capable of doing in a moment like that?
Right.
I'm not trained to address somebody like that and get them the help they need. I don't know how to do it. I don't. But I see it. It's in my neighborhood, on my street, it's like right on Elgin Street. One of the busiest streets in the city. And there she was. And I see her frequently. She's a nice lady. I've talked to her a few times. She needs help. I don't know how to get her the help she needs. And as the saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Right.
So do we commit her? Well, no, I don't want to do that. What do? I don't have an answer. But I know that there's no supports in place for her. And that is the sad part.
Yeah. And the other aspect that you mentioned is one of the reasons like groups like the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, where their backs rise up and they get really nervous when people start talking about involuntary treatment, because it applies to whomever is the government determine are the undesirables or the blights. And that's a goalpost that can shift and move.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Right. So That's a power you want to be very, 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 very careful to whom you give it to. Because the next person who gets it can turn around and then use it against you.
Exactly. Well, this comment here from Ree, until you feel the power of addiction, it's hard for someone to understand. And I do not, nor will I ever fully understand the power of addiction. I'm lucky I don't have an addictive personality. I'm very lucky I don't have that. Most people have addiction in their personality, whether it's to drugs or gambling or alcohol or sex or adrenaline junkies. Most people have some sort of addiction or lean into some sort of addiction. And when somebody says, well, how can working out all the time be an addiction? Just because it's healthy doesn't mean it's not an addiction.
Yes.
An addiction doesn't need to be unhealthy.
You could be a bodybuilder and still have body dysmorphia.
Yes. You could be Mr. Olympia and still have body dysmorphia.
It's usually the other way around, though. Because when we think about body dysmorphia, it's, I'm not thin enough, or or like, I'm, as it applies to people who are transgender, which is a whole different type of body dysmorphia.
Indeed.
But for people who are going to the gym and juicing up on steroids, for them, they're never big enough. They're never cut enough. They're never shredded enough. It's like they're, physically, they look like specimens compared to the average person, but it's not, as you say, enough.
Left, right, center, here and there.
It's not enough. There's already somebody bigger, somebody more shredded, somebody more ripped. Like this, you might have the best biceps in the entire gym, but somebody's got better calves.
Yeah.
I guess, and you have the body type that's such that calves are hard for you. For me, it's the other way around. If my entire body was like my calves, I'd be dangerous. But we all have body types, right? It's like if you live in the land of the ectomorph.
I think that's what I am. Am I ecto or meso? I can't remember. Somebody told me.
I don't know. But it's like it's like standing next to the guy who's like goes to the gym, lifts a 100-pound weight once, and then pops it, right? It's like you're never going to be that guy. It's like that's not your body type. Like this, but if you want what you can't have, and then you try to substitute that chemically somehow to try to make that happen, it's like you might get closer, but you are doing other things to your body. I remember reading an article many years ago, I think it was in Psychology Today, where they were asking gay men this. And again, if you think the beauty standards are high in certain areas, like when you get to gay men, holy crap, trust me, we kind of understand the dynamic with women, right? And we're seeing that happen. And people were asked, would you willingly shave, I think it was 5 years off your life or 10 years off your life in order to be the hottest version of you now? And it was frightening, the number of people who said yes to that.
Yeah, it's not
right. Really frightening, the number of people. And I'm thinking, if you're some cute 25-year-old thing or 31-year-old thing who thinks, you know what? Oh, yeah, I would do, because I would like to be hotter, and it's worth it for me to die, at 75 rather than 85 in order to have like 20 or 30 years really, really hot now. What are the odds that you're probably engaging in behaviors right now that are probably taking years off your life anyway? You're probably more likely. I don't have data to support that, but if you're okay with that, what says you aren't already someone who's hitting the gym and juicing? Right? Or willing to engage in plastic surgery? Or all those, and again, everybody makes their own choices, but every surgery you go under is a risk. Right? That's what got Joan Rivers eventually, right?
Yeah.
She went for one more plastic surgery, and right. So at some point, like Mr. Grizzly says, at some point there has to be a concept of enough. And if that's not there,
One would hope.
and that happens with drugs as well. People who party recreationally.
Hmm.
I remember from my rave days, right? There are people that went to a rave and they had like, this is all I need, and that's fine.
Hmm.
And then there were other people that were, going back to the bathroom several times a night, like this for
Hmm.
yet higher high. And you could always tell the difference around like 7 in the morning. So, enough, the concept of enough definitely does matter. And for some people, because we have to, again, we're all wired differently. For some people, whatever the addiction is, food, sex, work, gym, drugs, money, power, there's going to be a group for whom it will never be enough. There's going to be a group for whom it will never be enough.
They always
And
exist. They always.
Yep. And the services are needed for them. Unless you're just going to say that anybody in life for whom there's no such thing as enough, we've all pre-decided that we discard them and abandon them to their fate. I'm not sure that that's entirely compatible with wanting to be a government that is supposed to serve everyone. If you're serving everyone, you're also serving people with the more or complicated or difficult cases. And you have to be there for them. So starting off an election campaign where you're pointing to them and saying, see, that?
Mhm.
You want more of that? Nobody wants more of that.
Well, and they're othering.
Pointing, yes, but pointing to
othering,
it
right?
with that ew face,
Yeah.
like this, and looking down and punching down, helps nobody. And it doesn't help the people that you think you're helping, too.
Well, and it's the thing that our friend David Moscrop always says, and I've started using it a lot in real life. The conservatives are always punching down. They're punching down on people who cannot punch back.
Mm.
And they know it.
Mm.
And that's why they continue to do it.
And they always first to punch down on people they assume that nobody will stand up for.
Always. Always. That is not progressive. And I've talked to some friends of mine who are lifelong progressive conservatives who are absolutely disgusted by that. And I've had conversations with a friend of mine who's an immigrant. He's in his 70s. He's been here for over 55 years now, or 54 years now. And he's a lifelong progressive conservative. And we had a conversation one day a bunch of years back, and I said, would you agree with me that there's a certain percentage of the population that is unemployable? I said, I'll say around 3%. He says it's higher than that. I said, yeah. He goes, anywhere from 5 to 7. It fluctuates. These are people who cannot work, period. They can't, whether it be for physical or a mental health reason or whatever have you. We don't know. It's not important. There is a percentage of the population that is unemployable. And he says, and we need to take care of them. We need to make sure they're housed. We need to make sure they have enough money to live on. He says, because not doing that costs us more. That's why I say he's a progressive conservative. He understands that if we invest money in people, it saves us money. I mean, how many, UBI? Richard Nixon came up with a UBI. Richard Nixon. EPA, Richard Nixon. Was Richard Nixon a good man? I didn't think so. Smart man, yes. Knew how to play the game. Don't think he was a good man, my opinion. But again, a progressive idea. Let's give people enough money to live on so that they can support themselves instead of society having to do so. Now, society is technically doing it by funding it through taxes and a universal basic income, but it's costing us less. It costs us less to keep people housed and fed and clothed than it does to have them on the streets. And Dan can attest to this. People living on the streets tie up resources, EMTs, police officers, court systems, jailhouses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it costs us all more money in the long run. So let's come up with a UBI. Let's come up with a system that takes care of people at the most basic level. Because there's always going to be, like I said, a segment of the population that is unemployable. And if you cannot accept or understand that, well, there's no point in having the conversation with you because you refuse to see the truth.
Yeah.
You refuse to believe facts. You refuse to understand. Some people are just incapable of work.
Mhm. And you also would rather live in a world of should rather than a world of is.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
should not be happening. They should not be. Yeah, but it is. And they are.
Mm-hmm.
So deal with that. We should be having a better world. Yeah, but we don't.
We don't. So let's work with what we have and make things better for everybody else. We can. We have the money. People say, we can't afford this. You know, something called SUSE and SERB and a couple other programs that came along literally overnight for millions of Canadians. I know there were people who fell through the cracks. I know there were people who didn't get anything. I understand that. System wasn't perfect, but it was implemented at a record pace so that we could help people survive. We can do this. A UBI is possible. It's something we can implement. We can house people. We just have to have the will to do it. And what we really need are a few loud, powerful voices to get on side with this. Some wealthy individuals, be they tech or property developers, I don't care. Somebody with money and power and a loud voice who knows that this is the right thing to do and can really push it forward. Me, I'm just one tiny little voice amongst a sea of them. Can I affect change? I doubt it, but I'll try. I'll talk to everybody I can and say, here's why we need a UBI. The evidence is empirical that proves it works. In Finland, they eliminated homelessness. It's gone. And of the 85% of the people that they housed, not only did they get clean and sober, but they're employed. They have jobs now. They're putting money back into the system. This is a fundamental progressive conservative idea. As Wab Kinew said, we're willing to give you a hand up if you meet us halfway and put in some effort. Don't quote me. I was paraphrasing. I don't have the exact words in front of me, but that's effectively what he said. And again, that is a progressive conservative ideology. That is a Joe Clark ideology. That is a John Robarts ideology. It's not new, and it's something I've always been on board with. We're going to give you the help you need to get on your feet, but you got to put in a little bit of effort on your part. And we do understand, again, that there are people who can't do that. So those people we will help because we have to.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll get off my soapbox now. I'm going to enjoy my coffee.
Now, shifting from BC to New Brunswick just for a little bit, Blaine Higgs was his usual charming self. I would like you, Mr. Grizzly, if you could play the embedded video in the article.
What article? This one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I see it. Just give me a moment.
Premier Higgs decided, I believe it was on the first night of the campaign itself, that he was going to make a joke. And it did not go over.
Mm-hmm.
And it caused people to ask for an apology. So let's look at this little clip from Global News here.
PC leader Blaine Higgs is facing backlash over a joke made during his campaign launch event Thursday night. Higgs relayed a story from a volunteer during the 2014 election who encountered a supporter while door knocking and was told the neighbor had recently died.
They just said, "Oh, I'm I'm so sorry, was she sick or what happened? And the lady just said, oh, don't feel too bad. She was a Liberal.
Asked about the comments on Friday morning, Liberal leader Susan Holt said they were in bad taste and said it's incumbent on all candidates to keep the campaign respectful.
When the Premier is talking about dead Liberals and laughing at it, it certainly creates the temperature that's concerning.
While campaigning in Edmundston on Friday, Higgs confirmed the story was true and said too much was being made of the joke.
I don't think we should overplay that. It was a real-life experience that one of our candidates our volunteers had when they were knocking on doors, and I don't think we should make more than that out of it.
David Coon, leader of the Green Party, also condemned the remarks, noting a shift in the Premier's rhetoric.
He's descending into a very dark place, Mr. Higgs is. I don't know what happened to the man, but he's certainly a different person from the man who was elected in 2018.
Both opposition leaders have criticized what they call divisive rhetoric from Higgs, particularly in light of changes to school gender identity policy, as well as recent opposition to the province accepting an influx of asylum seekers. Both issues featured in Higgs's Thursday night speech. Holt told reporters her party has made pains to moderate their social media channels to avoid the abuse of other parties.
We have a policy that says you can't insult people's character or people. You can only comment on their actions and their words and their results. And so it's a great opportunity to ask that the supporters of these amazing people, of Team Holt, that they keep it respectful.
Election day is October 21st. Silas Brown, Global News, Fredericton.
Well done.
Okay.
Well done, Susan.
Yes. Now, Higgs is quoted as saying, I know that it's not an appropriate joke, but it was funny and it is true. No, it was not funny.
No.
It was inappropriate, however. And it is true that the person died. And maybe that person was liberal, but it's not funny. So I don't know what it is with conservatives and wanting to make jokes about liberals, particularly from the Atlantic region, die, because if we remember during the Harper days, we had then Agriculture and Agri-Food Minister Jerry Ritz joking about death by 1,000 coal cuts. And I remember somebody had mentioned that somebody had died, and he asked, is it Wayne Easter, who was his critic from the Liberal Party? Wayne Easter from Prince Edward Island, one of the nicest men in Parliament. Yeah, just joking. Oh, please tell me it was Wayne Easter who died.
Yeah.
This one, you don't have to go to the other door. She was a Liberal supporter anyway. She's dead now. As people, there's something called self-editing. Right? Where's your self-edit function, Premier? I mean, somewhere along the way, like, there's no bell in your head that went off and said, gee, if I say this, it could cause... Now, hey, maybe it's the whole thing, right? Given that he seems to be a changed person, not for the better. He has not changed for good. According to New Brunswick Greens leader David Coon, maybe maybe Blaine Higgs thought that this was a smart move to make that joke, and its self-edit function is a little corrupted.
Clearly.
But it's like, I don't know a reality in which that thought pops into your head and say, yeah, let's say that in front of a mic at a political gathering with cameras. Well, like that's where again, if you're a normal, reasonable, well-adjusted person, the light goes on inside your head, and you're like, you're about to say that, and say, you know what, I think I'm going to pull back on that one.
It's not a good time to have that discussion.
Unless you want the reaction. Unless you said it to get the reaction.
Maybe.
Because again, he also did the typical conservative white man thing. Oh, gee, can't you take a joke, man? I don't really think that we should making a big deal about me joking about other people having died and me not having to represent them. It's a good death because it's a liberal death. Don't hold me. I think it's too much. Please don't hold me accountable for the irresponsible things I said. I don't think we should be holding me responsible for my own mouth.
Yeah, that's effectively...
It's your mouth. If you're not responsible for what comes out of it, who is? You used your right of freedom of expression to say something really dumb and go to a dark place, and other people used yours to tell you so. There's no such thing as speech free of consequences. You might want to remember that next time you want to make a joke.
You have the freedom of expression in this country, and I will support that forever. You also need to understand there are consequences for the expression that you make sometimes. If it runs afoul of the large part of society, you're going to have to answer to that. You're free to express yourself, but you're not free from the consequences of that expression. You're not.
So his campaign is off to a great start. Launches and then ends up with a controversy. So your day one and your day two trying to get reelected have been spent putting out fires. The New Brunswick Liberal Association is calling on Blaine Higgs to apologize for this comment, said a statement issued by the New Brunswick Liberal Association. Making light of the death of any New Brunswicker is highly inappropriate for anyone and completely unacceptable for the Premier of the province. When asked about the Liberals' request for an apology, Progressive Conservative Party Executive Director Doug Williams shifted the focus back to past remarks from Liberal leader Susan Holt. No, not what about. Even if Susan Holt had made past remarks, that still doesn't change the fact that you made remarks. So we're talking about what you did. Let's try to stay on topic, please. The topic is your behavior. Right now, in this current conversation, the topic of conversation is your behavior, not Susan Holt's. So
Correct.
Let's deal with your behavior, and then if you have an issue about Susan Holt, we can discuss that later. But let's not discuss Susan Holt's behavior in lieu of discussing your behavior, because yours is an issue. These are behaviors. If you're a citizen at home watching TV, somebody did something that's obviously wrong. Well, yeah, but what about when that person said? That's someone you don't want to vote for.
Mm-hmm.
Because when that person is given power and happens to make a mistake, intentional or not, that's probably the answer you're going to get there too.
Indeed.
And the mistake that they make then might be one that very adversely impacts you. And I'm sure if that's the case, you would want somebody to say, oh my God, my bad. I'll fix that. Rather than, oh, that's not so bad. And what about the time they did that?
Well,
you're dealing with someone who doesn't really believe in personal responsibility. Just saying.
Things are starting to get a little bit. I mean, look, we're over a year away from the next election, unless the non-confidence vote actually was to go through, and it won't next week. It's not happening. NDP and the Bloc have already said they're not voting in support of the non-confidence motion. So it's all bluster from Pierre Poilievre. But last week in the House of Commons, things got a little heated.
Well, there were some heated exchanges during question period in the House of Commons today. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was accused by opposition Conservatives of using the F word, which is considered unparliamentary. Our chief political correspondent, David Aiken, is with me. David, question period can often get testy, we know. Sounds like it went over the top today.
Yeah, it was a heated question period, Don. It wasn't the craziest I've ever seen, but still emotions running very high. Now, on Wednesdays, the Prime Minister tends to take all of the questions in the 45-minute session. And in this one, he was goading the Conservatives over their stance on abortion. And then, towards the end of QP, he got a question about Air Force operations during the Freedom Convoy. And the PM was offended by the question.
What the member opposite just engaged in is dangerously close to misinformation and disinformation.
And you hear all that? That's when things really started to blow up. The Conservatives say that somewhere at that point, all this hubbub, Trudeau used the F word as an adjective aimed at the Conservative benches. Now, none of that is caught on tape because all of the microphones are muted whenever the speaker stands up. But when I asked the PM if he fuddle-duddled, he repeated what his dad once said when Pierre Trudeau was accused of the same thing.
What is the nature of your thoughts, gentlemen, when you say you move your lips in a particular way?
And here's Pierre.
What is the nature of your thoughts, gentlemen, when you say fuddle-duddle or something like that? God, you...
So there we go. Now, the Conservatives, for what it's worth, are asking the Speaker to investigate and hoping the Prime Minister will apologize. Donna?
All right, David Aiken in Ottawa, thank you.
See, now I would rather somebody apologize for using their privilege in the House to spread disinformation and misinformation than from somebody reacting to it and saying F you.
Exactly.
And that's pretty much the
Exactly.
situation over here, where the Conservatives in New Brunswick are, if Susan Holt is truly concerned about offensive comments, will she apologize for saying that concerns of parents about their children are BS? And that's not what she said.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of reformulated the statement and then passed it through the Conservative filter to make her statement something that you wanted, needed her, or wished she had said in order to have this reaction. But that's not what she said. Will she apologize for saying the Premier acts like a fascist? Why would she apologize for making a declarative sentence of fact in a dispassionate manner?
Mm-hmm.
He is acting like a fascist. The media have not paid any attention to these remarks despite progressive Conservatives raising them publicly, maybe because the way that you raised them did not reflect the reality of what happened. So people figured that you had an agenda and decided not to entertain you or engage you or help you on that agenda. Just like Justin Trudeau, Susan Holt wants apologies for things that other people have done and never wants to apologize for her own actions. I don't remember the last time I heard the Prime Minister say, I demand an apology, but I hear it pretty much every single freaking day from the Conservative benches.
Yes.
So, yeah. I don't know, man. Meanwhile, on the campaign trail, on Saturday, the Liberals promised to construct 30,000 housing units by 2030 and to eliminate 10% provincial sales tax on new multi-unit housing builds. This is in the New Brunswick election still. Holt said the elimination of the tax was a policy followed in Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. Quote, the Higgs government has been dragging its feet for far too long, leaving people in precarious housing situations. Our population is growing, and we welcome that, but it can't happen without a solid plan to tackle the housing shortage. The price of rent and home ownership is skyrocketing because Higgs doesn't have a plan to build more homes. Jill Green, Progressive Conservative candidate for Fredericton North, responded that the Tory government's Housing for All strategy already includes a goal of building 6,000 homes per year and will have 30,000 units constructed by 2030. Liberal leader Susan Holt is simply promising to do what's already being done, Green said in an email. She's not promising anything that's not already happening in the province. Green also questioned how much the Liberal pledge to remove the tax from multi-unit housing builds would cost. David Kuhn, leader of the Green Party, promised to restore rural services such as courts that were cut by past Liberal, Conservative governments to Charlotte County, the most southwestern county of New Brunswick, and to the Acadian Peninsula. Quote, part of improving services for rural residents is ensuring those living on our islands have a good and reliable connections to the mainland, Kuhn said in a statement Saturday. That's why I'm committed to year-round ferry service from the Campobello Island and a suitable bridge to connect the island of Lamec to Chipigan. And the portion of this that was about restoring rural services is something that we had reported on a few months ago as well. It seems that the government of New Brunswick closed down 2 smaller regional courthouses to put all the services in one, causing some of them to have to travel 2 hours in order to get to their court dates. And it looks like the Greens are talking about reestablishing those services in those centers to make things a little more convenient. So that's pretty much what's been going on the provincial election front, kids and cubs. Hope that brings you up to date, and we will be following this over, of course, the next few weeks, and the writ drop for Saskatchewan should be coming in a few days as well. So we'll be very, very busy. There'll be a lot of provincial election updates over the next few weeks, but we're doing our best to try to keep you informed. Sometimes it's a little harder to get the news from further away, given where we are.
We get it.
We try not to be Ontario centric, but
well, let's just focus on. I have something here. I'm going to show you. It's from Avis Favre. Canada's taxpayer-funded health system paid an estimated $1.5 billion in a one-year period to private agencies for nurses. A new report confirms nursing care is becoming a profit-making tool for 472 companies. That taxpayer money could be used to provide better care, retain nurses, says author Joan Almost. Queensview Health, nurses unions research. 2020, 225 million. 2023, 1.5 billion. 2023, 2024 fiscal. Private nursing agencies aren't fixing our health system with its staffing shortages. It's not working. Look how many emergency rooms have been closed in the last 6 months, and our level of nursing agencies is higher than we've ever been.
Yeah, and that's a quote from the president of the Canadian Federation of Nurses Union.
Correct. Thank you. Nurses left our public system driven out by exhaustion, frustration, and the lure of higher pay and more choice in shifts. The report shows pay ranges from $39 to $300 an hour, with perks like cell phones, gift cards, and signing bonuses. Agencies, according to the report, collect 25 to 35% in service fees. The report calls for immediate steps by provincial governments to phase out the use of private or profit nursing agencies in public health facilities. Some provinces, like Manitoba, are also trying to take the profit out of the nursing supply system by creating their own agencies to supply nurses to remote clinics and hospitals. Solutions are needed, says the report, because renting nurses from private companies is far more costly than finding ways to keep them on staff.
Yeah.
We're going to go broke. We're going to lose our public health care if we continue that way, said Linda Silas.
And could you show us the graph again, Mr. Wesley?
Yeah, just a second. I'll just pull it up here. And this is a staggering graph.
Because I think we're looking at a 4 or 5-fold increase in 4 fiscal years.
Mm-hmm.
See, we're between, let's say, 1,450.
Yeah, it's 1.5 billion in 2023 and 24.
From about 225 million.
In a 4-year period.
In a 4-year period, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that
225 million to 1.5 billion.
For the exact same service.
Right. Now, this is
that we were
projection
getting
to
before.
1.5 billion. Okay, because right now we're at about 1.3 billion.
Yeah.
And they predict another 200 million on top of that.
Ridiculous.
Yep.
Because you have to understand that these are the exact same bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're just working for a different employer and being paid different. But they're the exact same people that were there before. Right. This doesn't train new nurses. It doesn't create more spots in medical schools, in nursing schools, in hospital residencies. It doesn't provide incentive for people after they get their nursing or doctor's license to go work in a rural area. It doesn't provide any incentives for them to go into family medicine and general practice rather than a specialty. It doesn't do any of the stuff that you actually need. It doesn't change accreditation rules for recognizing foreign competency. It does nothing of that. All it does is saying, hey, we happen to need nurses here because we're on a shortage. Let's go to some place who's farming them out at 4 or 5 times the cost to make sure that this particular hospital on this particular day, on this particular shift, is properly staffed.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same people. It's literally a shell game, except your tax dollars that could be used, for example, to keep a surgical ward or surgical room, an operating room in a hospital open 24/7.
Or an ER.
Or an ER. But even the right? Like there are certain operating facilities that are open 24/7 because people come in an emergency like this needs to be open. But all the other ones that are not being used after 5 o'clock, after 5 p.m. or 4:30 p.m.
Yes, because nobody ever gets sick after 5 p.m.
Yes, but it's like, why can't your hip replacement be scheduled for 7 p.m. And be done then by a whole other team? Right? There's instead, no, we're going to pay private enterprises to open another one, funding some of their building costs, funding some of their equipment costs,
funding all of their labor costs,
paying the middleman 25 to 35% more for the exact same thing you could have been doing with the staff you already had and given them a bonus or incentive pay to be working the night shift.
Mm-hmm.
Where the facilities were already there, the people were already there, you didn't have to hire another company. All you had to do was extend the hours and provide some type of incentive. But instead, they created this whole other, all these people, again, typically conservative governments who say that they hate bloated and needless bureaucracy, all created these bloated and needless bureaucracies for the privilege of paying 4 or 5 times the price for what they were already getting. And then they pat themselves on the back and they say, look at us, aren't we great? Vote for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Happier news, kids and cubs. For those of you who like hockey,
yes,
well,
this is
the NHL preseason has started up. So hopefully all of you will enjoy that. But on another page, when it comes to the Professional Women's Hockey League, they have released their name logos for all 6 franchises for the season. So right here, if you are watching, you will see the logos. We have the one from Boston, which this one struck me the most because if you turn it about 90 degrees, yes, but 90 degrees, it looks a little like the Hartford Whalers logo, but
yes,
a whole lot, very, very much stylized, right?
Yeah.
So that one's the one that popped up immediately. I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. So, but we have Boston, Minnesota, Montreal, New York, Ottawa, and Toronto. These are the logos.
New York Sirens, the Ottawa Charge, the Montreal Victoire, the Minnesota Freeze. I can't remember what Toronto's team name is, or
the
Boston,
Septors.
Septors.
Toronto Septors, and the Boston one I can't remember off the top of my head, but we will see it in the article. The other sort of thing that
the Ottawa
tongues
Charge
wagging,
looks an awful lot like the Calgary Flames logo.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was saying. The other thing that got tongues wagging is that that because there's a little break in the O here, so it kind of looks a bit like more like a C kind of way, and so
that one the rest of them I like, but the Ottawa one I kind of like. I'll call the team the Charge, sure, no problem. It's just I don't.
A little more originality could have been there. I mean, it's literally the same colors too.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I mean, it looks so much like the sea with the flames. It's ridiculous.
It really does, and I believe it's the Boston Fleet. Is the one here, but let's get that Calgary Flames. Ottawa. There might be a side
there
by
is a
side.
side. Yeah, they look very similar. I mean, the difference is the Calgary Flames is the flat C, but it looks similar, whereas the Ottawa's at an angle charging
There we
towards
go.
you. But if you want to go ahead and share that.
But even even the little flame things are in the exact same spot.
Yeah,
pretty much.
It's like guys,
it's a different. It's a deeper red, but like the yellow outline and the.
I don't know why they went with the gold. They could have went with black, because Ottawa colors are red and black. The Senators, the Red Blacks, the Charge could have fallen right in line with that, and just sort of marrying the Ottawa colors, because the Ottawa Rough Riders and to the Ottawa Renegades to the Ottawa Red Blacks, the colors have always been red and black.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, there's also this too. If we're looking at Ottawa itself,
even the football team, the Ottawa Atletico is red.
Yeah. But if you're even looking at the City of Ottawa, the flag, you can sort of see where this inspiration here for the Chargers thing sort of came. But here it's blue, white, and aquamarine, I guess.
Yeah. Well, green. Yeah, a shade of green there. Yeah.
Right. So, I kind of see.
Yeah.
But it really is very, very, very.
I don't love it. I don't love it.
Neither do I.
But in other positive news, I don't know if you knew this, sir. So I will. Oh no, I'm sticking with hockey. It's still hockey. The National Capital Commission has announced a deal with the Ottawa Senators to one day build an NHL arena on 10 acres of land at LeBreton Flats.
Yes.
Price tag for the agreement has not been revealed. The multi-purpose facility is still years away, and the Sens organization has stressed there are still many steps to jump through. From Michael Andlauer, the owner of the team, he says, "I would love to say that in 5 years we're dropping the puck. It's certainly possible. I'd like to underpromise and overdeliver. So once the process gets started, we'll probably have a better idea as the year goes along. Now, the NCC initially was going to give the franchise 6 acres of land, but they ended up with 10. They were also able to reach the ability to purchase the land instead of lease it. Sens have played in Canada since 1996. That's 25 kilometers outside of downtown, which, as anybody in this city knows, on game day, during a weeknight, the traffic is brutal. Absolutely brutal. And it says, when we came out here, when you think about major facilities and the trends now and where they are, most arenas and stadiums are going downtown. When we came out here 30 years ago, that wasn't the case, said Senators President and CEO Cyril Leader at a Friday press conference. We certainly have been waiting and hoping that this would come through. It's going to bring obviously tons of people into the core. It's going to be good for the city and will certainly be good for us too. So we're excited to hear it's happening now, said Rock McIsaac, co-founder of Beyond the Pale Brewing. There are also concerns. The Pimisi Light Rail Transit Station, located near the future arena site, is unfit to handle substantial crowds. It's true. It's been an issue in the past with Canada Day and Blues Fest celebrations. Police have said the design of the nearby bridge makes it hard to accommodate substantial crowds and increases the risk of emergencies. There are also concerns over the amount of pedestrian and vehicle traffic which would come to the nearby West Wellington, Little Italy, and Chinatown neighborhoods. Pretty much it'll be Blues Fest every night of the year. We're used to people descending on this area, but it's usually just Blues Fest, said local resident Charlie Brady. In the mid-19th century, LeBreton Flats was developed into a mixed community to serve the lumber mills in the nearby Chaudière and Victoria Islands. When a rail line came in with a station and yards soon after, industries developed and the neighborhood boomed. When the Great Fire of 1900 hit, LeBreton Flats was completely decimated. It burned quickly because of the stacks of lumber. The community rebuilt, however, but lumber barons moved into the city. In the 1960s, Canada was working quickly to build new mega office complexes, and LeBreton Flats was expropriated to make way for development that never came. Disputes over the land use and soil contamination create a lot of bureaucracy in a city that's no stranger to that. The first sign of a new future came in 2005 when the Canadian War Museum opened on the site. Around that same time, some residential development also occurred. And in April of 2016, the Senators-backed Rendezvous LeBreton Group was awarded the development rights to LeBreton Flats by the NCC. There were lots of hope that this would be the beginning of the new vision for a large parcel of empty land, but by 2018, there were issues with the partners, which led to the deal falling apart. Eugene Melnick and his company and Trinity Development Chair John Ruddy and his company sued each other for hundreds of millions of dollars. Last year, when Mike Landauer purchased the Sens hockey team from the late Melnick, who died in 2022, there was hope new leadership could bring forward a new deal. A downtown arena was supported by Ottawa Mayor Mark Sutcliffe, who said a centralized sports and entertainment district would be beneficial to the city. Now, here is my only negative takeaway or concern about all of this, is that when they built the stations at Pimisi and Bayview, they knew that before the stations opened, they had talked of building the rink here in 2016. It only opened 5 years ago. So in 2016, they were talking about building it, and it was on the table. Then it went away, but they were under construction. So why did they underbuild the platforms?
I have no idea.
Like I use the train quite a bit, and the downtown tunnel, when you go onto the platform, like you walk in and you've got tons of room above the platform. But when you get down onto the platform, they're very narrow. They cannot handle they simply cannot handle a huge crowd. There's no space. I'm like, who the hell planned this?
I know. And that's the thing is, like, even if there wasn't going to be an arena there, we knew that
why
there was going to be
underbuild it?
more development there, either more residential or more something like.
Even without the rink.
place is majorly empty.
Yeah, and there's a 30-story tower that just went up. There's a couple of 50s and 40s planned. There's a 65 and a 55 planned, all right there. They knew this. This is planning's been in the stages for like 15 years. So they still underbuilt it.
And the thing with this arena, it's like, again, as is typical Ottawa for some reason. I love my hometown, but there's something when it comes to planning in this city. They're finally going to build it, if it goes ahead, in the spot that everybody said they should have built it in the first place.
And they
But back then we couldn't have
it
it because we were a capital and we had to maintain the allure of a capital with all our official buildings and whatnot. And we couldn't have like a sporting arena in the middle of all of that. What would people think? Like
The
this.
NCC at the time was very
Stodgy.
The NCC has to look 50 years into the future on everything they do. That's part of their mandate, right? They have to look at the future of the city and how the national capital gets built out. Okay, that's fine, but they also have to look at, we need to live today. So how can we build something today that can benefit us 50 years in the future? And they just, the old NCC was a bunch of old fuddy-duddies. Toby Nussbaum, the new CEO of the NCC, is very open and receptive to working with businesses and companies and people to build the things that this city needs to see. I've worked with Toby a couple of times. Real nice man. I really like him. A really nice guy. And his openness to accept and work with businesses. Not only that, but during the pandemic, businesses that rent from the NCC, restaurants, nightclubs, clothing stores, et cetera, because anything along Sussex Drive is NCC property.
Right.
And I have a few friends who have businesses there. And during that time, the NCC just said, don't worry. We've got you. Like, literally, don't worry. We've got you. We'll work with you. I don't know what kind of rental agreements they have. I'm not privy to that information, and it's none of my damn business, quite frankly. But nobody lost their business. They're all still there. Retail, clothing stores, art galleries, music venues, restaurants, they're all still there. The NCC worked with them because they realized, hey, look, what are we going to do? Give us some money? They don't have any income.
Right.
So what are you going to do? Kick them out? And then what? Who's going to take the place? Well, nobody will want to work with us. Not only that, it's an established business and people earn their livelihood here. So let's help people. Let's work with them. So the NCC today in Ottawa is very different than the one from 30 years ago when they first tried to build the rink down there. Mm-hmm. Very different.
Yeah. Now, for the, since we're still talking on rinks, for the PWHL, there's sort of like another little controversy with that because in Ottawa, the mayor, Mark Sutcliffe, announced this in June, that there will be a new 5,500-seat arena at Lansdowne Park, which will accommodate the success of the now Ottawa Charge in the years ahead. Yeah, but questions are raised about the size of the arena. It's a $419 million project being referred to as Lansdowne 2.0, which includes a new north side stands for TD Place and replaces the Civic Center with a new 5,500-seat arena and event center with room for 1,000 standing room spots. And as is the case in Alberta, a lot of people in Ottawa are complaining that about the amount of money that the mayor has put towards this, particular since the mayor of Ottawa over the past few weeks has been on a big public relations kick to ask the federal government to give it more money to help do stuff, revitalize the downtown core because it's been suffering because there hasn't been as many workers and all that kind of stuff. And if everybody's turning around, well, maybe you should have thought of that before you gave $500 million for an arena to people that have lots of money already. Maybe, Mr. Mayor. And his pleas have been meeting with very, very unreceptive ears by the federal government as well. It's like, no, this is your issue. You're the mayor. You need to govern and manage. So govern and manage. We're not your cleanup crew. So that's going on here. So like I said, with regard to this new venture for the NHL's Ottawa Senators, I would really, really like it if no public taxpayer dollars have to go for that. Yes. The land is not going to be leased. The land is going to be sold. So already, because I would much rather the land be leased than sold, because who knows, you might need it one day for something else. But they're actually going to sell land. So you own the land now. So you don't really need more of our money.
Well, and I don't believe that any public funds were supposed to go towards it at all. Yeah, I think that was part of the agreement with the NCC was you can build here, but we're not paying for it.
Yes, we'll sell you the land and you can build here. But so let's hope that there will be no more government incentives that way because there shouldn't be for these types of things.
No, it's a
if you're attracting the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games or something like that, and you're building more venues, that's one thing. But an actual professional arena for a professional venture from people who already have too much money already, no, thank you. The PWHL Ottawa led the league in attendance during the inaugural season with an average of 7,495 fans for the 12 games at TD Place. Now, again, you have to, when you count the averages, there's a couple of games that were held outside. Like one was held at the same venue that the Ottawa Senators played, and they sold out. So they had like 18,000 people there. So they did that a few times. But still, if over 12 games, they got 7,495 fans. We build an arena for 5,500, and we can expect that the brand is going to get better and more people are going to buy in. Again, aren't you underbuilding?
Yes.
Right off the bat, shouldn't it be at least a 10,000 seat arena to start?
One would think. I mean, that's what the Civic Center originally was 10,000 seats.
Right. So, quote, this arena is going to serve a multitude of purposes. We're not just building an arena for PWHL Ottawa. So, well, it seems you're not even building enough for that.
No.
Everybody is excited about the success of PWHL Ottawa. I'm thrilled with how it's gone and the atmosphere at their games, and it brings out a different crowd, but they're going to use it for 15 nights a year out of 365. Capacity at the arena at TD Place is approximately 8,500 for hockey right now. So they're building a smaller one.
Make it make sense.
WTF?
Yeah.
Sutcliffe says the City of Ottawa and the Ottawa Sports Entertainment Group, OSEG, have been discussing the arena's plans with officials from the Professional Women's Hockey League and PWHL Ottawa. Quote, it's not just about the seats, it's not just about selling tickets, it's also about the experience at the games, the atmosphere, the experience for the players who are now using very, very old-fashioned, outdated facilities at the current arena. There's a lot of benefits for PWHL Ottawa here, even if we end up with an arena that's a few hundred seats smaller. A few hundred seats. 3,000. Not a few hundred. Several hundred. Like 3,100. Smaller.
Make it make sense.
The new event center at Lansdowne will also accommodate the Ottawa 67s, the Ottawa Blackjacks basketball team, concerts, shows, and other sporting events in Ottawa. Called, we're told the right size of the facility for those kind of events is 5,500 to 6,500 range, and everybody will be able to adapt to that. It will be a great experience. Yes, okay. So basically, their thinking is that the hockey team's only going to use it 15 nights a year. Yes, and for everything else we're going to use it for, we estimate crowds of 5,500 to 6,500. So let's build it for what's going to be used most nights.
Yeah.
I guess, and let's not have the extra capacity like this for a couple events that could be bigger. Now, the thing is that between this 5,500 seat stadium and the 18,000 that's at the Scotiabank Center now, is it? Or
Canadian Tire Center.
Canadian Tire Center. Between those two, there's no venue.
Well,
so
actually,
if you need a venue for like 10,000 or so,
there's none. There's none. Yeah. Well, there's the Civic Center currently, but that's going to be changing. The arena at TD Place, sorry.
I know.
There's also the Slush Puppy Center in Gatineau, which is about 5,000 seats. And
so there is already a 5,000 seat in the area.
Yes, and in the Byward Market, there will soon be a 3,000 seat venue. The former Chapters has been taken over by Live Nation, and they're building a live music venue there.
Okay, because that was one too. We didn't have like a sort of like medium.
Yeah, we have
small to medium
venues,
range.
but nothing larger, like a 3,000 to 5,000 seater. Yeah. There's nothing like that.
I think we had like the Penguin at one point that accommodated up to like 800 or so, but that closed like at least a decade ago.
Oh, no, longer than that.
If not more than that.
It's more than 20 years ago.
But there's been nothing between that size and the 8,500 really anywhere in Ottawa.
Well, you could theoretically look at the Nepean Sportsplex as a venue because the rink, I think, holds 3,000 to 5,000.
That's true.
However, it's not exactly easily accessible for the vast majority of the citizens in the region. And the population base in Nepean, former Nepean, certainly has the base to support it, but it's a drive. You have to drive there. There's not enough transit to get you there. And if you live downtown and want to go see a show there, it's kind of way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yep. So we have
and I hope I didn't offend anybody by that, but I mean, it really is. It's right on the edge of the Greenbelt, right by the edge of the experimental farm.
Yeah. So while the Mayor Sutcliffe is saying, like this, well, basically saying the changing rooms are going to be nicer for the players and more updated like this, well, important.
Mm-hmm.
right? For the consumer experience, how nice the changing rooms are for the players is neither here nor there. So Councillor Sean Minar, who has been critical of the plan, argues a smaller stadium is a concern. Quote, the concern is really we're going to be tearing down something that is valuable to put up something with less seats, more expensive tickets, without a roof over people's head, and the football stands anyways. And then for PWHL games and 67 games that sell out in the playoffs, it's a big concern for those fans. Moshe Lander, a professor in the Department of Economics at Concordia University, agrees the stadium plan doesn't account for a growing city. Quote, what might seem like a good idea now in 10 to 20 years when the city is 50% larger than it is, it's really going to look small by comparison. I think that's when they're really going to regret it because these arenas are intended to last a minimum of 35 to 40 years. So basically, I think what they're counting on, or the city planners are basically saying that attendance for the PWHL games are going to drop now. That's not a novelty anymore. The mayor says he hopes PWHL Ottawa's success off the ice continues for the season 2 and beyond, but wonders if attendance will continue to grow as part of Ottawa's sports landscape. Quote, if you look around the landscape of sports teams in Ottawa, there's not a team whose problem is we don't have enough seats, that we're selling too many tickets and we don't have enough places to put people. That's not the typical experience of a professional or semi-professional sports team in Ottawa. If it ends up that PWH Ottawa has the problem, that's a nice problem to have. I think we can squeeze in a few more seats, but it's not going to be an 8,500 seat arena. And one of the reasons I am mentioning this specifically is because if you look at Montreal and Toronto that have recently announced for their PWH teams, it's completely going in the different direction.
Correct.
PWHL Montreal announced Wednesday that Place Belle will serve as the team's primary home next center. The team played 6 times at the Laval, Quebec venue last season with the majority game. So this is Place Belle in Laval on the North Shore, not the Centre Belle. So that's where I went to see the Sarah McLachlan concert a few weeks ago. But PWHL Montreal said it will continue to train out of the Verdun Auditorium, which features Center 2102, the country's first and only recognized high-performance hockey center for female athletes. Quote, we are extremely happy to be able to accommodate our growing number of fans and to give them even more opportunities to come and support our players. Place Belle is also the home of the Laval Rocket, the American Hockey League affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, and 3 of the PWHL Montreal games held at the arena last season reached a capacity crowd of 10,172. Now, of course, Montreal is a much bigger city than is in Ottawa. And then in Toronto, the PWHL Toronto team has announced that they're moving to the Coca-Cola Coliseum next season,
where the Marlies play.
Yes. The women's hockey team will now be playing at an 8,700-seat Coliseum, an upgrade from the Mattamy Athletic Center, which seats 2,600. Again, I understand Toronto is a bigger city, and they are moving to an 8,700-seat. Ottawa already has an 8,500-seat. Yes, you would assume that there would be more people going to games in Toronto than in Ottawa, just from population size.
Well,
but
Ottawa's
the reduction in the number of
that it can support a larger rink because what was the average? Almost 8,000.
Yeah. So it's a decision that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. Yeah, Ottawa's average was 7,495.
So 7,500 was the average. So we're going to cut that down by 2,000.
Yeah. How is that going to help the team being able to finance itself to bring the marquee players? If the gate revenue, what it's going to do is it's going to jack up the price per ticket, though.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
These are not smart decisions. These are not smart. Ottawa does not have a good mayor at the moment.
He's been a little disappointing. He's been a little disappointing for a lot of reasons. And a lot of people who were pro Mark Sutcliffe are shocked to see some of the things he's done. And I've talked to a few people who were big supporters and voted for him, and now they're like, man, I'm so disappointed. And this is like pro-business people, right? Because Sutcliffe was supposed to be pro-business. But turns out he's kind of failed on that front.
Yeah. Couple of other little bits of news, Kits and Cubs, before we go. The Prime Minister is currently in New York.
It's going to be on the Stephen Colbert Show this evening.
Yes, indeed. He's going to be on the Stephen Colbert Show this evening. Interesting move. But he is in New York for the fall session of the United Nations General Assembly. He delivered a speech the other day already. He's going to be there for 4 days. So his visit began on Sunday, where he met with his Japanese counterpart, as well as New York Governor Kathy Hochul and United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And darn, where did the article go?
I don't know.
Just disappeared. Yeah, he delivered I don't know where the hell it went. Oh my God, that's kind of weird.
It's fine.
But anyway, he was at, he's there. There's some meeting stuff that he's doing as mentioned here, but then he'll continue on. He said in his speech that was there that the world is at an inflection point. Quote, Mr. President, fellow delegates, friends, as we meet here in New York at the UN General Assembly for the Summit of the Future, we're at a global inflection point. Faced with escalating instability beset by increasingly dire costs of climate change, contending with rising inequality does leave the most vulnerable behind. We have a choice. We can bury our heads in the sand, or we can recognize that collectively we have a responsibility to set our differences aside. The Prime Minister said that isolation would not solve the various serious problems that countries collectively face. Now, he's at the portion at the United Nations headquarters is part of a 2-day Summit of the Future, which is a gathering of world leaders that's happening ahead of the annual meeting of the General Assembly. So they're basically 2 events back to back, which means he's there for 4 days. He said that according to Evan Dyer of CBC, UN members adopted a pact of the future. And Evan Dyer says specifically, the Prime Minister's speech was a short one, but these speeches are supposed to be short, and it was. It sounded in some ways more like something here on the campaign trail in Canada, actually. The theme was Canada's vision for a global generation fairness, and the only country the Prime Minister mentioned in the speech was Canada this time around, when he talked about some of the programs he's governed, such as bringing in dental care, $10 a day childcare, talking about housing and domestic issues. He didn't mention Ukraine at all, which is a bit unusual for Trudeau in a speech. There was nothing about Haiti as well, considering Canada's role in supporting a peacekeeping mission and a transitional government. And apparently things have been improving since the transitional government has been put in place in Haiti. So
that's good.
Fingers crossed that this will continue on a positive trend. And nothing about the situation in the Middle East. So it was a speech that was tightly focused on Canada and Canada as a model for the world. He did speak about women's rights, and he does talk about these broader themes, women's rights, climate change, but women's and girls' rights specifically, he described as being eroded along with the rights of LGBT people around the world. And those are fixtures of his in his national speeches. It's also a big part of Canada's overseas aid policies. And people are wondering if the mention of eroding rights for girls and women is kind of a way to insert himself into the discussion going on in the United States without officially inserting himself in the discussion, considering that right now there's an election campaign and issues such as in vitro fertilization and procreative rights being on ballots for the upcoming election are all there.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we know that the right-wing media ecosystem there certainly has no problem putting the Prime Minister of Canada's name in its mouth whenever it wants, which is kind of interesting for us as Canadians because we're used to being ignored, but because our Prime Minister happens to be the elder statesman of sort of the global progressive movement, because he's kind of been the one who's there the longest. He's become a very convenient punching bag for the people at Fox News and Newsmax and OAN and all that kind of stuff. So maybe his appearance on the Colbert Show has a little bit to do with that.
I think
you want to talk about me? Let's give you something to talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah, looking forward to seeing what that. I will be watching that. That's for sure. So Evan Dyer said, so when a Canadian PM comes here and takes out a position on those issues, talks about women's rights going backwards, those remarks will probably be heard in the context of U.S. political debate as well. And perhaps they're meant to be heard that way. He says, now let's talk about when he says, then he goes on to say, let's talk about the UN General Assembly, which begins on Tuesday. Some of the themes that are expected to dominate there for Canada will be the attempt to first restore peace in Haiti and then carry out a political transition that would lead to new Haitian elections. But a lot of that, we know that President Biden was trying to get Canada to take the lead on that, which Canada said, no. But we are still one of the top powers calling the shots in Haiti. And to that effect, today, Trudeau will be meeting with members of the Transitional Council from Haiti and then attend a larger meeting with the Ad Hoc Advisory Group for Haiti, which Canada chairs. And that other groups, like nations like the US and EU member states and Brazil, will also be part of that discussion. Another issue that will be raised is the one of the International Court of Justice ruling on the occupation of Palestinian territories by Israel. A large majority of the countries voted to demand that Israel leave those territories within a year, which is mostly symbolic because there's no enforcement mechanism for that. And given the rhetoric from Netanyahu and the Netanyahu government in Israel, nobody actually expects that Israel is going to comply with that. But it is a significant symbolic development. In that vote, Canada abstained rather than voting against it, which is a bit of a departure for us on the international diplomacy scene. And then, of course, there's the Ukraine conflict that will be brought up because that's now approaching the 1,000 days mark. And it now seems to be a full-scale war. Or the movement towards full-scale war is what's on everybody's minds. So allies,
now that they've been granted permission to fire missiles into Russia.
Exactly. Allies had been actively debating whether to allow Ukraine to attack Russia directly with long-range weapons provided by NATO. Trudeau and Biden are both expected to meet with President Zelensky over the next few days. And it looks like there will be an official decision on the long-range weapons being fired directly into Russia that were announced. And indications right now are that the answer is likely going to be, yeah, go ahead, do it. So that could change the game. Another thing that probably won't be brought up out there, but people will be having discussions about in the corridors, is that in Germany, the party of the Chancellor Olaf Scholz won the biggest share of the vote in Brandenburg, but it's a slim victory because we'd mentioned there had been 2 elections in 2 states in Germany, and one that was won by the AfD, and the AfD finished second in another. Well, the AfD finished second here as well. Like the difference was about like 1%. But the governing party did maintain the largest share of the vote there. And there are federal elections next year in Germany. So the weekend's vote was being viewed as a test of confidence in Scholz's leadership. The Social Democrats have governed the Brandenburg state, which surrounds Berlin, since German reunification. And that's the thing. These 3 sets of elections all took place in the former part of Germany that used to be East Germany before reunification. So there you go. Those are the big things there. And nationally, it seems that the Conservatives are going to be looking, because there are 7 opposition days in the current calendar, 5 go to the Conservatives, 1 goes to the Bloc, and 1 goes to the NDP. And it seems that the Conservatives want to use all 5 of them before now and Christmas. So basically, from the Conservative Party of Canada, all it's going to be until Christmas is non-confidence votes. Let's get Justin out. What's the matter, Jugmead? Are you chicken? What's the matter, Bloc? Are you developing an alliance with the Liberals? And that's literally all we're going to get from them until then and now, because they're just going to go from non-confidence motion to non-confidence motion. some people are predicting that the government might fall before Christmas because there's so much power in Blanchet's hands, and Blanchet's not a particularly patient man. When it comes to these types of things, he knows that he has the government by the short and curlies and wants to extract concessions, but he's not going to do the thing with the Liberals. Okay, yes, we'll do that. Let's do this study and then the consultation and allow this to go 6 months and whatnot. They want it now.
Yes.
Little Freddie Mercury here. They want it all and they want it now. So according to Blanchet, he says that the first policy plank is to expand an increase in the old age security, I believe it is.
Correct.
The Liberals had given a 10% hike to old age security for people between higher than the ages of 75. And that caused the Bloc Québécois pretty much instantly to go, hey, wait a minute, why isn't that for everybody over 65?
Right.
So they are pushing for that. Now, oddly enough, the Bloc Québécois is pushing for a policy that will help the Québécois, but also Canadians. Everyone, because he doesn't want this to apply just in Quebec. He wants this to apply coast to coast to coast, so that everybody who's between 65 and 74 will get that 10% hike that everybody that was 75 and over got. It's a policy that comes with a price tag of about $16 billion over the next 5 years. So, and if Blanchet doesn't get what he wants, basically he says, we have a very good chance to obtain that in the coming weeks. And if not, something will happen. He says, Jean-Yves Duclos, who's now the Quebec lieutenant, says that the Liberals are open to the idea. And he goes, yes, we're also working with the Bloc and we'll see how we can further support seniors. Now we have Laurie Turnbull, who's a political science professor at Dalhousie University, who says, if we had an election today or tomorrow or anytime in the next month, I think things would go catastrophically for the Liberals. But she says that the Liberals are hoping to buy more time to disparage their main opponent by doing this. And she says, I think that Justin Trudeau thinks that if enough time goes by, the people will come around. I think he thinks that something evil about Pierre Poilievre will reveal itself. A lot of people have been speculating about that, or whether Justin Trudeau knows something that Pierre doesn't know that Justin knows, particularly related to foreign interference, that might change the game, because the Prime Minister does seem to be rather unbothered and chipper, which, considering the circumstances, would seem abnormal, unless he knew something was coming. You just keep running your mouth, Pierre. Just keep running your mouth. Nobody knows whether or not the Prime Minister knows something. But people are wondering, based on his behavior, whether or not he does.
Well, I think he does, and I think Jagmeet Singh does too, because his behavior lately would make me think that he probably knows something we don't.
So the Bloc Québécois will fight for this, and then they will be looking for other things, some guarantees on supply management for the dairy thing, and probably more powers for immigration. But he'll want these things, and he'll want these things fast. Now, Blanchet is not doing something like asking for the government to support separation or whatnot. That could be a poison pill. So he seems to not be making huge demands that the government would be instinctively or inherently opposed to. So he seems to be playing for what he thinks he can get, but he seems to want it very, very quickly. And a lot of people are predicting that if the government does fall, it probably would fall after all those provincial elections, sometimes in November, but on the Bloc Québécois opposition day, as opposed to. So, but that would depend a lot on where the NDP is at that time. It's because if the NDP is still really low in the polls, remember, they need both parties to do that. So if the NDP is still relatively low in the polls and they don't necessarily have all their candidates in place or as much money as they would like to prosecute the entire election, you could have a situation where the Bloc Québécois and the Conservators are voting for it and the NDP decides to hold it off because they're not ready yet. But that's sort of the earliest people are thinking. Most people are still thinking that the government, if it's going to fall, it's going to probably fall on the budget. And possibly that if the Liberals sense that tensions are getting a little tight, that the Liberals might put a program in the budget that would be branded for them, that they could run on, that other parties would say no to in order to engineer their own defeat, rather than just being defeated on carbon tax or whatnot. So we'll see how it happens. But whoever said once, I remember when I was a kid, nobody pays attention to Canadian politics. Canadian politics are boring. Grab some popcorn.
Yeah.
Because they ain't boring anymore. That's for sure. All right, Mr. Grizzly, do we have a show?
We do indeed, sir.
Okay, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring, and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. It's very important that you do. Now, if you would like to not miss an episode, you don't have to, thanks to the Ray Girl, who sponsored our pod page. If you scan that QR code that just appeared under my chin, then that will bring you there. Or if you're listening, podpage.com/TheTrueNorthEagerBeaver, lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words. And if you go there and click subscribe, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. You don't even have to ask. We just deliver. That's how we roll. Now, if you'd like to help us in another way, then you need to make like Kit Elaine and surf yourself on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated page on YouTube. And there she is, right on time, saying, have a beyond awesome day, everyone, and remember to smash the button before you leave. And we do have buttons for you, like, share, and subscribe. So have some fun. Click them. We need you to click them. It's very important to us. It makes us happy, and in turn, we produce a show that hopefully makes you happy. And if you'd like to support us in another way, the QR code by Mr. Grizzly's lovely dome right there will bring you to our tip jar that can be found at our coffee page. That's coffee, ko-fi.com/Eager Beaver, lowercase letters. I was going to say true eager, but that's our Twitter feed. So coffee, ko-fi.com/Eager Beaver, lowercase letters, all in one word. And like I said, it's our tip jar. If you like our product, you want to encourage us to do more, you feel sorry for us because we do take pity donations, please put a little something in our tip jar, and we would be very, very grateful. Now, if you're not able to contribute financially, that's quite all right, because the gift of your attention and participation is the one that matters most to us. And we love to hear from you. So please write to us, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about the show. If you have some comments about the content, if you have an opinion about the content, please share what you think. We'd like to know. If you would like to write to us in other places, our Twitter feed is @TrueEager. You can also reach us on our Facebook page, True North Eager Beaver, or leave a comment right here on our YouTube page if you happen to be watching there. Thank you so very much. And if you happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts, please do leave us a review and leave us some stars. Very, very, very appreciated. All right. Because democracy is something that you do, we're done with the by-elections, and the nomination period is closed in Ward 15, so we have all the candidates. Hopefully, over the next few days, we'll be having a chat with Kit Dan, who is running in Ward 15 for you, kids and cubs. And we are hoping to also have, if you remember him, we had him on our show a few months ago, Tim Krutzman, who's a teacher from British Columbia. He will come back and give us his lay of the land for the British Columbia elections. And that
will be a pre-record because we're not going to ask him to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly. And we have a couple of requests out to other people to come and talk to us about New Brunswick and Saskatchewan and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully over the next little while, we might have a few more interviews, because we've been interview light over the course of the summer for you. So have some people coming to talk to you about what's going on. So there you go. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that. Kids and cubs, it can be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. Mr. Grizzly, do you have some words of wisdom, please?
I
know.
There's just so much on the go right now, and some days it's difficult to remain positive when you have so much negativity floating about, especially if you watch Question Period like I do from time to time. I don't watch it all the time. I think it was last week. I think it was Wednesday, actually. I watched the first 5 minutes and I had to tap out because it was like Every con that got up, they have 60 seconds, and all they did was they all repeated the same damn thing.
Yep.
Prices are up, crime is up, time is up, time for the Liberals to go. And then they would say something that had nothing to do with that little preamble, which was, and every one of them did the same. I'm like, okay, what are they, robots? Can any of them think for themselves? Or are they just going to keep hammering home this stupid free slogan?
Everybody is saying the slogan thing in case theirs is the clip that gets there. So the branding is in every single potential clip. Again, they're not focused on you.
I read about a gentleman who online who was saying he had a conservative MP come and knock on his door and wanted to talk to him. And he says, okay, what are your policies? Well, we'll release our platform when the writ is dropped. He goes, okay, but all you ever do is repeat the same 3-word slogans, time is up, crime is up, blah, blah, blah. What are you actually going to do? Well, we'll talk about that when the writ is dropped. He says, so you have no plan. You have nothing. Well, you have to understand. He goes, no. What are you planning to do to make my life better and the lives of my friends and neighbors? Zero response. You know why? They don't have a plan. They don't.
And they're basically showing up at your door and wasting your time.
Yes.
If you're not here, if you're not knocking on my door to tell me what it is that you plan to do for me, and only to bitch about the other guy, you're wasting my time.
Completely wasting my time. Yeah.
I didn't open my door to hear you complain. I opened my door to hear you answer. What have you done for me lately?
And the answer is nothing. They have nothing. There is no plan. They have the concept of the plan.
There you go, Linda. We have a concept of a platform.
Sure. So don't let it get you down. Try and remain positive. And remember, if you're having a bad day, you can always check out my ASMR show at 9 p.m. on Mondays, right here. Well, not right here, but on my own personal YouTube channel, Polly's World 2005. You can find me there at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, where I will discuss in a calm and soothing voice mental health, what I'm going through, methods to alleviate mental health issues when and where you can, and how to seek help if you need to. So, yeah, I'll be here at 9 o'clock.
That was very smooth, Mr. Grizzly. I like that.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Grizzly, please cue the cock. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. Just a little things, because I saw that in the chat earlier today. Happy birthday to, I believe, Kit Frankie's daughter, I believe, is having a birthday. And Kit Elaine mentioned Baby 5 and Baby 3, who had birthdays, I think one today and one yesterday, maybe. So I hope everything goes well there. Also saw some comments in the chat about my debut in Twitter Spaces with Legally Purdy. Thank you for the kind words. That did not go as I had expected, to be totally honest. No, Spaces is way more animated and passionate, and like our vibe here is pretty chill. As soon as other people started chatting, it was really like, I was the enemy brought into other territory. I must be destroyed. Which was something that I was, because we're trying to do this bridging the gap sort of thing, right?
Right.
And I brought in my best don't scare the villagers. Here's how other people could see it another way, rather than me saying like this, you're all wrong. That didn't seem to help in any way, shape, or form. Like I say, it was an interesting experience. I don't think it's necessarily the format that's best suited for me, but I might try it again.
I've been on a few.
Yeah, it's a little. I'm a little more chill, and I like to shut up when other people talk. So, which is it doesn't seem to be it's necessarily in the culture and spaces. Culture and spaces seems to be that if you're talking and you say one keyword that someone doesn't like, somebody will just jump all over you and silence you and make it so that you cannot get it out whatsoever. You're not allowed to speak. I got a little heated for one moment. Tried to give someone a little taste of their medicine who was behaving towards me in a way that they didn't want people behaving towards them.
So they did it to you. Okay,
yes.
sure.
So I gave them a little bit of how did you like it for a second. Probably not my best moment during the chat, but after that I regained my composure. However, it was like I said, it was an interesting experience, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily the platform or the media specifically for me. But it was it was an interesting experience. There were things that happened there that I noticed that were a little inconsistent, but it wasn't my space. And I figured if I commented on that, then I would deviate the whole conversation to something else. But I really went there expecting to talk stuff about Tenet and whatnot because I had read the whole 30. We had read the 32 page, and the introduction started that way, and then somewhere during the introduction, something about vaccines and whatnot, and it ended up being this whole thing about vaccines and mandates and whatnot. And I'm just sitting there going, "Oh God, no!" So I'm not. I'm not sure if it was spaces are just rambling and whatnot, and it just goes wherever, or whether or not. I won't say that it was a bait and switch. We didn't have time to have a pre-episode meeting.
Where can I find it? I didn't even know about
I
it.
think Legally Purdy, but Legally Purdy to me, she was kind and all that kind of stuff. So we don't have an issue. But I would have. I did not come in prepared to be talking about vaccines and mandates and convoy and that type of stuff. I came prepared to be speaking about, the DOG thing and, Pierre Poilievre, the confidence vote standing alone. And none of that was discussed, not even 1 second. So I was there for about 2 hours. And there was one person, I think, in the whole thing that came up to speak sort of in favor of positions that I was putting out. And unfortunately, that person got booted out because he was bringing pro-vax stuff, and apparently that was not allowed, which I found very surprising because we were bringing me in to bridge the gap, and then the first person that said something that might be supporting things that I said was not allowed to speak. So, yeah, kind of interesting.
Called controlling the narrative.
Yeah. So, yeah, not sure. Like I said, my relationship with Legally Purdy is perfectly fine, and I would, for now, until unless something happens, would do something else with her. But there might need to be a slightly more moderation of some kind for me to be able to feel comfortable in that type of space, because there was a lot of incoming that way, and the vibe here is a little more like we have people with different views and whatnot, but it's just a little more calm and a little more chill. And people give time for people to say their piece.
Well, we don't have screaming matches on here when we have guests.
Yeah. So, interesting. But, different medium, different format, different houses, different rules, and you have to adapt for the people that you're speaking to. So I might, like I said, give it another try to see whether or not. And I like to believe in trying things 3 times. First time, you may have done it wrong. The second time, something, it may have just been a bad day. If by the third time you don't like it, it's probably not for you. So I will use that philosophy going into that, but it was not the most comfortable experience. I will have to say that.
I'll give it a listen. I got to go take out Lola first, and then I'll come back and put it on and give it a go while I get some work done around here.
Nice. And I'm seeing other comments here about things that have evolved, and comments that people are making that could be what is indeed going on. Who knows? But like I said, I like my experiences with people to be my own experiences with people. So we'll see what happens, and hopefully we'll be able to find a format that works a little better, because I do believe in the idea of having two people from two different perspectives. And it's not like me and her don't get along on a whole bunch of other things. We crack some jokes and whatnot and have a good time. So it seems like here's a person with whom there are things on which I do agree and things on which I don't agree. And it seems that the things on which we don't agree doesn't stop us from having a good time and making jokes and, and sharing stuff about the things we do agree. So there is some elements there to build something for a format, but we'll see. I have to feel comfortable in the home to want to do that, especially on a regular basis.
All righty. Well, I'll have a listen to that a little later on once I get some stuff done and take the doggy out, and I'll give it a go. All right.
All right.
I'm out of here. I'll see you.
Bye, everyone.